There's a question I wish more men were honest enough to ask themselves. Not out loud, not on a date, not even to their closest friends, just alone, late at night, when the room is quiet, when there's nobody around to impress. And the question is this: if she were exactly the same woman, same personality, same smile, same kindness, same flaws, but a different age, would I feel the same way? Most men never sit with that question long enough, because the answer makes them uncomfortable. And maybe that's why you clicked on this video. Because somewhere inside you, you already know age gap relationships are more complicated than the internet wants to admit. Not necessarily wrong, not necessarily unhealthy, but complicated. And if you're the kind of man who values honesty more than comforting stories, then stay with me. And if something in these words feels strangely familiar, if it feels like I'm describing thoughts you've never told anyone, then consider subscribing. Not because I need another subscriber, because sometimes the conversations that change us begin with the things we're finally willing to hear. I've spent years listening to people talk about love, not the polished version, not the version they post online, the version they whisper when they're exhausted from pretending. And one thing I've noticed is that age gap relationships often become containers. Containers for needs, containers for fears, containers for parts of ourselves we don't fully understand. A 45-year-old man meets a woman in her 20s. Everyone immediately starts arguing. Some people call it romantic, others call it suspicious. But almost nobody asks the deeper question: what is happening psychologically? Because attraction is rarely about what we think it's about. A man might tell himself he's attracted to her energy, her optimism, her spontaneity, and maybe that's true. But sometimes what he's really attracted to is how he feels when he's around her. For a few hours, he stops feeling old. He stops feeling invisible. He stops feeling the weight of every year behind him. And that's where things become interesting, because there's nothing shameful about wanting to feel alive. Nothing. The problem begins when a person mistakes relief for love. Those are not the same thing, not even close. Relief feels powerful. Relief feels intoxicating. Relief can feel like destiny, especially if you've spent years carrying loneliness you never admitted was there. I remember talking to a man who described meeting a younger woman as feeling like getting oxygen back. That was his phrase, getting oxygen back. And when he said it, his eyes lit up. But then I asked him something. I asked what his life felt like before she arrived. And suddenly everything changed. Because underneath the excitement was grief, years of it. A marriage that had ended, dreams he never pursued. A growing fear that the most meaningful chapters of his life were already behind him. The younger woman wasn't creating all those emotions, she was temporarily silencing them. And that's a very different thing. Many men never notice this distinction. They think they're running towards someone, when sometimes they're actually running away from something, away from regret, away from aging, away from the terrifying feeling that life moved faster than they expected. And if you're listening carefully, you'll notice I'm not criticizing those feelings. They're human. Every man experiences them eventually. The danger isn't having them. The danger is building an entire relationship on top of them. Because eventually the excitement settles, reality arrives, and whatever you were trying not to feel starts knocking again, only this time it's louder, much louder. And that's where the real story begins. The part nobody prepares you for is what happens after the fantasy becomes ordinary. Because every relationship, every single one, eventually leaves the honeymoon phase and enters reality. That's not failure, that's where truth begins. And age gap relationships have a unique way of revealing truths that neither person expected to face. At first, differences can feel exciting. You introduce each other to different music, different memories, different ways of seeing the world. You laugh about references the other person doesn't understand. It feels charming, almost romantic. But over time, those differences stop being occasional moments. They become daily realities. And daily realities have a way of exposing things attraction alone cannot solve. Imagine a man sitting across from a woman he genuinely cares about. She's talking about where she wants her life to go, the cities she wants to live in, the risks she wants to take, the experiences she hasn't had yet. And suddenly he feels something he doesn't want to admit. Not jealousy, not resentment, something more complicated. A quiet awareness that she is standing at the beginning of chapters he has already lived. Not all of them, but many. And for the first time, he realizes they are not simply two people in love. They are two people moving through different seasons of life. That's a difficult realization, because love doesn't erase timing, love doesn't erase reality, and pretending otherwise usually creates pain later. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about age gap relationships is that the challenge comes from other people's judgment. Honestly, that's often the easiest part. The harder challenge is what happens privately, the conversations nobody sees, the fears nobody posts about, the moments when one person wants stability while the other wants exploration, the moments when one person is thinking about building permanence while the other is still discovering who they are. Neither person is wrong. That's what makes it painful. If someone is wrong, the answer is simple. But when both people have valid needs, life becomes much more complicated. And maturity means accepting complexity instead of searching for villains. I once heard a man say something that stayed with me. He said, "I was convinced she made me feel young." Then he paused and corrected himself. "No, she made me feel hopeful." That's different, very different, because youth isn't actually what most people are chasing. Hope is, possibility is, the feeling that life is still unfolding, the feeling that something beautiful could still happen. And if we're honest, that longing exists in men of every age. 25, 45, 65, it never completely disappears. What changes is how consciously we relate to it. Some men try to satisfy that longing through another person. Others learn to reconnect with parts of themselves they abandoned years ago. The second path is harder, but it's also healthier, because no relationship can permanently provide what only self-reconciliation can create. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Sometimes a younger partner becomes an emotional mirror, not because she's trying to, not because she's manipulative, simply because her presence reflects something back to him, his unfinished dreams, his missed opportunities, his younger self. The version of him that once believed he would become someone different, someone bigger, someone braver, someone happier. And when that reflection appears, two things can happen. A man can become grateful for it, or he can become dependent on it. The difference is enormous. Gratitude says, "This relationship reminds me to stay alive." Dependence says, "I need this relationship to feel alive." Those two sentences sound similar, but psychologically they lead to completely different destinations. One creates connection, the other creates pressure. And no relationship survives endless pressure, not for long, because eventually the other person feels responsible for carrying emotional weight that was never theirs to carry. And when that happens, even genuine love starts feeling heavy. Not beautiful, not freeing, heavy. The strange thing is that most men can sense this happening long before they admit it. They feel it in quiet moments, in moments of insecurity, in moments when they wonder why certain fears suddenly feel so intense. But they push those thoughts away, because facing them would require asking a question most people spend years avoiding. A question that has almost nothing to do with age and everything to do with identity. Who am I when nobody is making me feel special? Who am I when attraction isn't distracting me? Who am I when I have to face myself without the emotional anesthesia of being desired? That question changes everything, and in many age gap relationships, sooner or later, it arrives. What I'm about to say might be the part people resist the most. Not because it's harsh, because it's recognizable. And recognizable truths are often the hardest to sit with. Many men secretly believe attraction will heal wounds they haven't healed themselves. Not consciously, most would never say it out loud. But underneath the surface, the hope is there. The hope that being wanted will silence self-doubt. The hope that being chosen will erase old rejection. The hope that love will somehow rewrite the story they've been telling themselves for years. And for a while, it almost seems to work. That's what makes it so convincing. A younger woman looks at him with admiration. She laughs at his stories, she values his experience, she sees qualities that other people overlook. And suddenly something dormant wakes up inside him, something that hasn't felt seen in a very long time, maybe ever. But here's the psychological trap. Being seen is not the same thing as seeing yourself. Read that again, because that distinction changes everything. A person can spend years receiving validation while still feeling empty. Years being admired while secretly feeling inadequate. Years being loved while still carrying loneliness. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. Not because people are broken, because external attention can only touch certain layers of the human experience. The deeper layers require something else. They require honesty, and honesty is rarely comfortable. Let's imagine a man sitting alone after an argument. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just one of those quiet disagreements couples have. The kind that leaves both people staring at opposite walls, and suddenly he notices how frightened he feels. Not angry, frightened. The possibility of losing her feels unbearable, far more unbearable than it should. That's the moment worth paying attention to, because sometimes what we fear losing isn't the person, it's the version of ourselves that exists around them, the confident version, the desired version, the hopeful version, the version that feels younger, stronger, more significant. And if you've attached your identity to that version, every conflict starts feeling dangerous. Every disagreement feels bigger. Every sign of distance feels threatening. Not because the relationship is unhealthy, because your sense of self has become tangled inside it. This is where age gap relationships reveal something profound. They often magnify emotional dynamics that exist in many relationships but remain hidden elsewhere. The age difference isn't always the issue. Sometimes it's simply the spotlight, the thing that illuminates vulnerabilities that were already there. A younger partner doesn't create insecurity. She may simply expose insecurity that was waiting quietly beneath the surface. And exposure can feel uncomfortable, but exposure is also where growth begins. I remember speaking with a man in his 50s who told me something remarkably honest. He said, "When I met her, I thought she changed my life." Then he smiled. Not the happy kind of smile, the reflective kind. The kind people have when they finally stop lying to themselves. And he continued, "Years later, I realized she didn't change my life. She revealed the parts of my life I was avoiding." That sentence stayed with me because it captured something most people never articulate. Relationships often function like mirrors. Not perfect mirrors, but mirrors nonetheless. They reveal our fears, our needs, our strengths, our unresolved grief, our hopes, the things we celebrate, the things we hide. And sometimes the reflection is uncomfortable enough that we'd rather blame the relationship than examine ourselves. But mature love asks something different. It asks, can I appreciate what this person brings into my life without making them responsible for completing it? Can I love them without turning them into a solution? Can I see them clearly instead of seeing only what they represent? Those questions sound simple. They're not. They're some of the hardest psychological challenges a person can face, because they require separating genuine connection from emotional dependency. And most people spend years confusing the two, maybe decades. Which brings us to the truth almost nobody talks about. The most difficult age gap in many relationships isn't measured in years, it's measured in self-awareness. And when two people are living at very different levels of self-awareness, that's when the deepest tensions begin to emerge. There's a moment that happens in some relationships that almost nobody talks about, not because it's rare, because it's difficult to explain. It's the moment when attraction is still there, love may even be there, but the illusion starts to fade. And when the illusion fades, people finally begin seeing each other as human beings instead of emotional symbols. That moment changes everything. In the beginning, it's easy to project meaning onto someone. A younger woman can become a symbol of possibility, a fresh start, a second chance, a reminder that life still holds surprises. Likewise, an older man can become a symbol too. Security, wisdom, confidence, direction, experience. The problem is that symbols are easy to love. Human beings are not. Human beings disappoint. Human beings have bad moods. Human beings change. Human beings carry wounds that don't disappear simply because someone loves them. And eventually, every relationship reaches the point where reality replaces imagination. That's where true compatibility is tested. Not when everything feels exciting, when everything feels ordinary. Ordinary is where truth lives. Ordinary mornings, ordinary conversations, ordinary frustrations, ordinary silence. The internet spends so much time talking about chemistry that it rarely discusses endurance. But endurance is what determines whether a relationship survives. Because chemistry creates momentum, character creates stability, and stability becomes increasingly important once the emotional fireworks settle down. I sometimes think men underestimate how deeply they want to be understood. Not admired, not desired, understood. There's a difference. Admiration feels good, desire feels exciting, understanding feels safe. And as men grow older, many discover that understanding matters far more than they expected. The strange part is that some don't realize this until they've spent years chasing other things. Validation, attention, excitement, novelty. Only to discover that none of those experiences quiet the deeper loneliness they were trying to escape. Because loneliness isn't always the absence of people. Sometimes it's the absence of being known, truly known. Think about the relationships that left the deepest marks on your life. Not necessarily the most passionate ones, the ones you still remember years later. Chances are what made them meaningful wasn't appearance. It wasn't age. It wasn't status. It was the feeling that someone genuinely saw you. Not the image, not the performance, you. The parts you showed everyone, and the parts you didn't. That kind of connection is rare, and rarity gives it value. This is why some age gap relationships thrive while others collapse. The successful ones eventually stop revolving around age. The age difference becomes background noise. What remains is mutual respect, mutual curiosity, mutual emotional maturity, a willingness to keep learning each other, again and again, year after year. The unsuccessful ones never reach that point. They stay trapped inside the symbolism. One person remains attached to what the other represents, rather than who they actually are. And over time, that creates disappointment, because no human being can permanently live inside someone else's fantasy. Eventually, they need room to be themselves. Flawed, complicated, real. There's another uncomfortable truth here. Sometimes a relationship survives because both people continue growing. Sometimes it ends because they grow in different directions. Neither outcome automatically means the relationship failed. I think that's something people struggle to accept. Not every meaningful relationship is meant to last forever. Some relationships teach, some heal, some transform, some endure for decades. Human connection isn't measured solely by duration, it's measured by depth, by honesty, by what it awakens inside us. And when I talk to men who've reflected deeply on their lives, I notice something fascinating. Very few speak passionately about age, almost none. What they remember are moments, conversations, shared struggles, the way someone looked at them during difficult seasons, the feeling of being accepted when they weren't at their best, the feeling of coming home emotionally. Those are the memories that remain. Not numbers, not labels, not age differences, just human connection. Which leads us to the final truth. The truth hiding underneath this entire conversation. The question that has been sitting quietly beneath every word we've discussed so far. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So here it is. The truth about age gap relationships that almost nobody talks about. It's not really about age, at least not in the way people think. Age matters, life stages matter, long-term compatibility matters. Those realities should never be ignored. But beneath all of that is a deeper question, a much quieter question, a question that determines more than the number of birthdays separating two people. The question is, what are you actually looking for? Not what you tell other people, not what sounds reasonable. What are you truly looking for? Because if you're honest enough, you'll discover that many of the strongest attractions in your life were carrying hidden messages. Sometimes the message was, I want to feel desired. Sometimes it was, I want to feel important. Sometimes it was, I want proof that my best years aren't behind me. And sometimes it was something even more vulnerable. I want someone to see me. Not the role, not the reputation, not the image. Me. The person underneath everything. The person who gets tired. The person who worries. The person who occasionally wonders if he's done enough with his life. The person who carries private fears he never discusses. The person nobody applauds. The person sitting alone watching this video. That person. I think many men spend years trying to solve emotional questions through external experiences. A new relationship, a new goal, a new achievement, a new beginning. And there's nothing wrong with beginnings. I love beginnings. But some questions follow us into every new chapter. Because they aren't relationship questions, they're identity questions. And identity questions cannot be solved by another person, only explored alongside them. That's a crucial difference. The healthiest relationships I've ever witnessed all shared one quality. Neither person was trying to escape themselves. They weren't using each other as hiding places. They weren't asking the relationship to erase their insecurities. They weren't expecting love to perform psychological miracles. Instead, they brought their full humanity into the connection. Their strengths, their flaws, their fears, their hopes, and they allowed the other person to do the same. No pedestal, no fantasy, no performance, just honesty. Messy, imperfect honesty. The kind that takes courage. If you're in an age gap relationship right now, this isn't a warning, and it certainly isn't a judgment. Some age gap relationships become deeply meaningful partnerships. Others don't. Just like relationships between people the same age. The real difference is whether both people are willing to see each other clearly, not as symbols, not as solutions, not as answers to questions neither person can answer, but as human beings, independent, complex, growing, changing, real. Because real love begins where projection ends. And maybe that's the thought I want to leave you with tonight. Not a rule, not advice, just a thought. Imagine sitting across from the person you care about most. No labels, no opinions from strangers, no discussions about age, no outside noise at all, just the two of you. Now ask yourself, if everything symbolic disappeared, if all that remained was character, conversation, trust, respect, emotional safety, would I still choose this person? Would I still feel drawn toward them? Would I still want to build a life beside them? If the answer is yes, a deep, honest yes, then you're already asking the right questions. Because meaningful relationships don't survive on fascination alone, they survive on truth. And truth is rarely flashy. Truth is quiet. Truth sits with you after the excitement fades. Truth remains when appearances change. Truth remains when life becomes ordinary. Truth remains when nobody is watching. And perhaps that's the most beautiful thing about mature love. Not that it makes us feel younger, not that it makes us feel powerful, not even that it makes us feel happy every day, but that it slowly invites us to become more honest, more self-aware, more human. And in the end, that may be what we're all searching for. Not someone who helps us escape ourselves, but someone who inspires us to finally meet ourselves. And if you've listened this far, sitting here in the quiet with me, maybe that's the conversation you needed all along.